Let's face it, the past few years have been an unprecedented mess. The weight of continuous, heavy issues, burnout, fatigue, confusion, stagnance. Sound familiar? What I decided to do was to have meaningful conversations with women I admire. It's the women in my life and yours that continue to thrive through whatever it is that life throws at them. I want to know, how are they doing it? How are they getting there? And how can I glean a little bit of their wisdom? This is that. And that's what she said. Willow Reichelt, it is so nice to have you here for this conversation. I have been wanting to talk to you for so long. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Carin.
We have been working together quite closely for a few years, but I want to know a little more about the backstory about Willow when she was first becoming interested in the education system. You're pretty much at the top of our education system now. Tell me a little bit about your journey that way.
Yeah, so when I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Victoria, and I had very, very good grades. So it was actually hard for me to figure out what subject area I was actually interested in, because I was good at,
you were just academically
very strong, right?
Yeah.
So I went to university without a real plan, and I went into arts, so humanities basically. So I took so many different courses, and then after my first year, I kind of decided, actually, I'm really artistic. I'd like to be an artist. So then I switched to the Faculty of Visual Arts.
Oh, cool.
And so I did that for 2 years. And then it wasn't quite the right program for me, because the UVic program was very theoretical and not much about actually teaching how to do things.
Oh,
and
okay.
I wanted to actually get like tips
The
on
skills.
the skills. So I switched back, and I ended up with my getting an English degree.
Oh.
And so then
what an interesting conundrum to find yourself in. Willow is someone with an immensely capable brain, and she found herself at university getting great grades in all of her classes, but this didn't actually help her figure out what she actually enjoyed doing. A different kind of problem to have, but I really enjoy hearing about all the different, stops she took along the way.
I had this degree. I was like, oh no, what do I do with an English degree? So I was really interested in, I've always been quite, I want to make the world a better place. And I thought, you know what, if I become a teacher, I can teach kids how to think critically. I can actually teach them about, what's going on in the world, and make them think about big issues. And if I can, influence young children, then wow, is what better way to make the world a better place, right?
I love that. And you had like this academic talent that you felt you could give back by sharing that.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
students.
So I became a teacher, and it really wasn't for me, actually.
Oh, no? Which grade were you at?
Well, I trained for middle school.
Okay.
And then I ended up, taught on call for a long time, because I was like, oh, actually, I think I made a mistake.
Oh, really? So you didn't like it at first?
No. Like
interesting.
I really like working one-on-one with students.
Yes,
and I really actually like the part of like, teaching, like coming up with a lesson, imparting knowledge. I like all of that. I don't like marking. It's just a bit of it's not that
kills
exciting.
Your soul.
Yeah, and a lot of the prep work is not, and I don't know, there's just something about it. And I felt when I went into teaching, education it wasn't as cool as it is now, honestly.
Oh,
the new curriculum is so much better, so much more creative, so much more integrated. When I was in teaching, it was very much like subjects were siloed, right?
Yes.
And very letter grades based. So I taught on call for a number of years.
This is such an interesting point about the changes to the public school curriculum that have taken place in the past couple of decades. It is so wonderful to be alive right now and to see the integration of subjects and to see, how Willow described it as it was quite siloed. There were, real specific expectations for each subject, and that wasn't something that resonated really well with her as a teacher. And today's curriculum, today's approach, would have worked for her far better. I guess for me, just an aside, I'm really glad to see the education system having evolved in this way as well.
And then I got a job doing art prep
Oh,
at an
cool.
elementary school, which was the best job I had. It was
I
so
bet.
fun. I got to go to all the classes and do just art with all the kids. But then because of the hours got cut to the school for prep, and I ended up teaching grade 4 or 5.
Okay.
And then I ended up teaching grade 6, and then it was when I was teaching grade 6 that I quit teaching. But
Okay, so you had grade 4, grade 5, and grade 6
yes,
experience.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I really do like kids, but at the time it was so, I don't want to teach kids art and then give them a letter grade at the end of it.
Right? I completely agree with that. There's like this juxtaposition almost that's putting two systems together, and we can bridge them, but not necessarily by putting tape.
The new way that we have for elementary and that we're moving up to middle, where this is your subject, this is your either meeting, you're exceeding,
Yes.
I would have loved that. That's
so
so
much
much
better.
better.
Yeah.
And especially like when I taught art, the way I would do it is I would have a rubric of these are the things that you have to include in your piece of art.
Okay, yes.
And then sometimes kids would say, I'm done. And I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't look really done. But then once it's done, I want to say, great, you finished your art. That's awesome. I don't want to be like, C+.
I know.
It's just so sad, right?
So you noticed there was these almost, philosophical barriers to how you were seeing your work going.
Yeah, and especially with reading, where I just really believe that if you give kids access to excellent literature and you create a passion for reading, they learn to read.
Yeah.
Obviously, we do need
Preach, girl. Yes. Thank you.
some like teaching phonics, and we need to teach the basics, but there just seemed to be this real trend towards we're going to put kids in groups of their reading level. We're going to make them read books that are at their level. They're going to sound out words. I'm like, where is the love of reading in that?
Good point.
And so I couldn't hack it anymore. And then the other problem was that it was the previous government, and the cuts that were made to education over the 16 years that government was in power were atrocious. Yeah. And 2 years before I quit teaching, I had 8 kids with categories in my class.
Wow.
4 of them were extreme behavior, and I had an hour and a half of EA time a day.
Wow.
And it was just not enough.
It was just a losing battle.
And so you were failing children. I was failing them. I mean, it wasn't my fault, but
but
you don't have time.
You weren't set up to have a totally successful experience.
Yeah,
there.
and so I just felt like I couldn't participate in the system anymore.
And is that when you kind of decided, you know what, maybe what my skill set is a better fit for is the administrative or the legislative piece?
Well, really, I was just like, I'm out. I'm going to be an artist.
Okay. You're like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm going to Burning Man. Bye. Okay.
So basically that's what happened. So I was like, I'm going to focus on artwork instead. I have these different passions. I have a passion for books and reading.
Yeah.
I do
Your
really
artwork
like
is
teaching.
amazing.
I do artwork. Like maybe I'm just going to focus on art.
I was really glad that Willow brought up her artwork. I mean, it's such a huge part of her life, so certainly it would have come up in a discussion about her life. But as someone who's just been an admirer of her project from afar, she does all these fabric patterns, and she does our more chill, less whack. Just love all that fun, spunky art that she's always putting out there. What a gift to the community.
So I quit teaching. I didn't want to have to pay my mortgage with artwork because that's very stressful. So
Yeah.
I very quickly went and got a medical transcription certificate.
Oh,
and then I was
okay.
doing that for 3 years.
Okay.
And then
So having this amazing brain lends you a lot of different skills. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's cool.
and then it was just badly paying. So it's piecework. It's not unionized. Anyways, so I was like, this isn't working for me. So we sold our house downsized to an apartment so we wouldn't have a mortgage, so I could really focus on art.
Yes.
And then I got into politics instead. So I'm still doing art as a hobby, but I did realize that becoming a school trustee would be a way to use my passion for education in a different avenue where I didn't have to be in the classroom every day.
Well, yeah, and isn't it funny how part of life and kind of part of going through this whole experience, we don't necessarily realize those things before they come along.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we had this amazing plan at first, but maybe that's not necessarily how it went.
Yeah, well, I mean, I spent so many years in education, not quite like jiving with the way the system was, and feeling like, oh my goodness, I wasted all this time in university, kind of. And then now I feel like it was all, it's all worked out. It all led to where I am now. So, I'm
Exactly.
able to contribute quite a lot to.
It struck me that this was really one of those situations where, in life, as your younger self, you may not have a full picture of what your journey is going to look like. I mean, obviously we can't. We're not time travelers. But it's neat how Willow found her way back to the school system in a different capacity. She'd always had a real yearning to be in the school system, but the first several things she tried weren't the best fit for her. So I love her persistence there and how she's, ended up in the place that she can really do the most meaningful work on her own terms. Love that.
My role as trustee from having that background as an actual teacher.
Absolutely. And I love that, one of your art projects, I would say, the most famous art project you've done is the More Chill, Less Whack shirt. And, I just shared those for some reason. I can't remember. There was an anniversary of the project or something. I shared it, and people didn't even realize it was you that had designed that.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, don't you know that she's this artist? And you do a lot of fabric designing as well.
Yeah, well, I've never honestly been able to focus on my art and do just one thing.
Right.
And that was supposed to be the plan when we sold our house. I was going to just do art, and then I got politically active. And so I'm still just doing it as a hobby, honestly. So I do a lot of stuff. But yeah, I got into doing fabric design. I got an iPad, so I was practicing digital creation.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And so that was really interesting because I'm an artist, so I do a lot of drawing. But then doing fabric design is more graphic design.
Yeah,
and so it was actually a real learning curve for me where I had to learn, okay, to make these designs successful, you maybe need to pare back the number of colors you use. You maybe have to simplify the shapes you're using to have them translate well into fabric design.
Oh, interesting. It's almost like you take a very systematic approach to art in a way.
Yeah. So then, when I did More Chill, Less Whack, I'd learned a lot of those skills from doing the fabric stuff.
You see them everywhere. They're stickers, they're shirts, they're bumper stickers. I see them in Vancouver.
Yes.
Anywhere I go, I see them.
Yeah.
Now, okay, another thing I want to ask you about is, during all this artwork, education, you also were raising 2 boys together with your husband, Chris. So tell me a little bit about how the boys came into the mix. Did you decide at some point during teaching, okay, now it's time, or?
Yeah. So my husband and I met when we were in high school.
You're high school
yeah, it's adorable. I know.
It's totally adorable.
It's so funny. So I always think it's kind of funny because I am, this very progressive person. You wouldn't necessarily see all the things I do and say and think that's someone who married their high school sweetheart. But he's the best. I love him so much. He's my best friend. So that's what happened. We met each other when we were very young and we're best friends. And we went to the same university and we just grew together, right?
High school sweethearts. Oh, be still my heart.
Amazing.
So we were together for 7 years when we got married. We got married right after I got my teaching certificate. And then we moved back to Chilliwack because we had student loans and also needed jobs. And at the time, we're Gen X. A lot of the boomers were all still in their jobs because they were still relatively young. And there was this little bit of a time period where there were less teaching jobs. So it was a bit hard to get into teaching.
Was Chilliwack...
they were hiring. So that's why we moved back.
And that is why you're here? Because that is where you could find a teaching job.
Yeah. And,
isn't that interesting?
And my parents were here.
Well, that's
so we knew we were going to eventually have a family. No, I grew up here.
Oh, you did grow up here?
Yeah,
okay, cool.
I graduated from Sardis Senior.
Wow.
I went to Yarrow Elementary and then Vetter Junior at the time, which is now Vetter Middle.
Okay.
And then Sardis Senior, yeah. And Chris and I met when we were at Sardis Senior.
At Sardis Senior?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Very cool. So he was basically, your confidant, your partner was always there.
Yeah.
And so was there a decision to have the kids or was it just part of your journey?
Very planned.
Okay.
So I sort of did know from the very start of when I was teaching that it was maybe not going to be the thing I did for my whole entire life.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, oh no, but I've made this decision to go to university and I did this. Maybe I should go back to school. And then we're like, well, at some point we're going to have kids. So that's one decision we know we want to do. Yes. So let's just do that, and then I'll figure out the career stuff later. Okay. And then I had 2 kids, and suddenly you don't figure a thing out because you're tired. Raising 2 kids. Right. But anyways,
wait a second. Yeah.
They're fantastic. I love my
they're all grown
kids.
up now.
Yeah, they're Max is 21. He's living in Victoria. And Milo is 19 and he's still living at home with us for a while, but he's graduated now, so.
That must have been, tell me about that moment, watching your own son walk across the stage as a school trustee sitting in the front row.
Yeah, when Max graduated, I don't think I was quite a school trustee yet, but Milo, when he was walking across, yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are just going to take a short break. And when we come back, I would like to hear more about your experiences in politics, more about kind of how that materialized for you and what it's been like so far.
Okay,
And I'll
thanks.
be right back. And we are back with Willow Reichelt, who is the vice chair of our school board in District 33. But for a long time, you were the chair as well.
For 1 year, yeah.
Talk to me about your experience on the school board so far. First of all, what was it like when you got elected, and why did you decide to run?
So I had been thinking of running for school board actually since I quit teaching.
Okay.
A little bit, like
Yes.
off and on. I was thinking, that's one thing maybe I could do
have
because
so
now
much
I'm not.
skill there.
You can't run in the district that you teach in. It's not an option. No one who
course.
works in the district can run for a school board. And then when I did quit, I sort of had it in the back of my mind. Oh, maybe that's something I'll do one day. But then the way I got spurred to actually running in 2018 were, there was a school trustee who made some really horrible homophobic and transphobic remarks. And so I organized some rallies at the school board office in support of LGBTQ youth in our district. And then I realized that I should run because I had, people knew who I was a little bit. And I felt like I had a good chance of winning, getting on the board. So I ran because of that.
Okay, take me back to those protests, those first, because I feel like that was those were extremely meaningful for what has since happened in our district.
Yeah, it was amazing, honestly. I mean, so many people showed up, and contrary to what people would have you believe, they were primarily people from Chilliwack. There were some people from Langley who came out on their own because they were involved with fighting against some of that same bigotry in their town, but the vast majority of people were from Chilliwack.
Okay.
There was no paid buses.
I
don't finance protesters. It's not my jam. I just put a Facebook event up, and everyone was encouraged to really try to focus on positive messaging, although I don't believe in.
Talk about being a change maker. So I love how Willow's intro into politics wasn't direct. What she started doing, she knew she was an activist, so she started with these rallies at the school board office. And I love how she really pursued that, realizing there was to be a far greater role for her in this area. Very cool beginning to her political career.
Home policing people, so if members of the queer community wanted to, do an angry sign, I didn't tell them not to. But it was really focused on supporting youth and not necessarily, it was trying to be positive.
To just bring out, because let's face it, those themes have been scary ones out here for many years.
Yeah.
And I think that you have brought a lot of this to light. You have started to really forge a path.
Yeah.
You've also gotten a lot of heat for it, though.
Yeah, I have. Some of our fellow trustees have repeatedly said they were violent protests, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I went over and talked to Griffin Security, who were there during the protest. We were very friendly with each other. It was not a violent protest. I believe at one point a grandmother did go into the actual board office and silently walked around holding a sign, and then walked out. So that was as violent as the protest got. Yeah.
Okay.
They were noisy though,
Yeah.
and so I think if you were on the other side and you didn't like that people were mad that you said horrible homophobic and transphobic things, and then you heard a lot of honking and cheering while you were trying to conduct a board meeting, I could see that would feel a bit intimidating. But it was noisy. It wasn't violent.
Gotcha. Okay. So,
and also, I want to point out that the honking had nothing to do with the protesters. That was people driving by supporting.
who saw?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm setting the scene here. So this was during a board meeting.
Yeah.
You were not on the school board yet.
No.
But there was a board meeting going
Yes.
on, and there was a protest
Yes.
about the,
Yes.
against homophobia
Yes.
and assorted
Yes.
other associated topics.
Yes.
And so you were already kind of, I don't know, the term disturber comes to mind, but you were basically like, no.
Yeah,
there's something new
what
here.
had happened was I had previously organized a rally in support of Muslim immigrants after the mosque shooting in Quebec. So that was in 2017. And so I was known for doing that. So when someone made very horrible remarks, I had a couple people who worked in the district actually approached me and asked me if I would help organize the rally because they didn't feel safe doing it because they were employees of the district.
Oh, how interesting.
So I agreed to take that on, and we set up a committee, and I had like 8 other people helping me. It certainly wasn't just me. I'm comfortable talking in front of people and in front of the camera and stuff. And so I became a little bit of a face of it, but it certainly wasn't my effort alone. There was a lot of people helping me with that whole event. And, but I had written, I believe, a letter to the editor, and I had done a few things.
Well, and this is the thing, your bravery and your strength in that way, you know, it does absolutely put a target on your back for sure. But it something that I just strikes me as so remarkable is how many people are sort of so grateful to you. And, you know, sometimes you and I will be just having a coffee downtown or something, and people will come up to us and thank you for everything you've done. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to stand up to that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you've read any books or articles about anti-racism work or anti-oppressive work, one of the tenets is if you stay silent in the face of bigotry, you're complicit.
It's a really
right, and so I so firmly believe that if someone is.
It can't be easy to be that person who is the first one or among the first who are standing up against something. I admire Willow so much, you know, for many reasons, but her eloquence in the face of, you know, receiving feedback that was scary and derogatory, that's pretty challenging. So I take a lot of notes from her pages here for how to do it, for how to be an activist and how to stand up for what's right.
If I'm in a room and someone says something racist and I don't say, you can't say that, that's not okay, then I'm condoning that. And then the whole room tacitly agrees with that behavior. And I won't do that.
That is so well said. It happens far too frequently, even in 2022. Yeah. What advice do you give to women or others who are hearing these conversations, who are accidentally kind of complicit in it, but don't feel that strong?
Yeah, I mean, I understand why some people don't feel strong to do it. And, you know, I especially feel, I mean, I'm a woman, so I'm, you know, marginalized in that way, as we've seen with all that's happening in the U.S. lately. Gender is definitely a way that people are marginalized, but I'm also white, I'm straight, I have, you know, a decent income. So there are lots of ways that I'm privileged, right? Okay. And so, you know, and still, when I speak out, I have hate directed towards me. And so I understand why someone who was a member of the LGBTQ community or a BIPOC person would not feel safe speaking out. And I would never fault anyone who just doesn't feel safe to speak out because of their personal circumstances. But that's why I feel obligated, that I do have these privileges. I feel obligated to speak out. Yes. And, you know, if I decide it's too hard, then I don't know, I feel that it will make it less safe for people who, ideally, we want people on the board who are LGBTQ, who are BIPOC. We want to have a diverse board, and right now it's really not. Mm-hmm. but we need to make it a safe space, and I'm trying to do that for people.
Yeah, and oh my goodness, even the gratitude that I feel towards you for your strength in standing up is so remarkable. I mean, there was literally just this past Friday a youth queer dance event, and it was huge. It was phenomenally successful. There were so many kids there, and it just really felt like that kind of event wouldn't have had the permission to, and I don't mean literal permission, I just mean, you know, wouldn't have felt like a safe enough space to have done that 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, and Chilliwack Pride is really amazing. That organization, I mean, they're just fantastic. And you know, some of the people involved with that were some of the people who helped me with the rallies, right? So, you know, sometimes I get, just because I am outspoken, I do get more credit than other people for doing things. And I think that's, you know, there's so many people, I don't want to name them on this in case they don't want, but you know, there's so many people doing amazing things in Chilliwack, right? So, but I think it is important for people like me to speak out loud and clearly against some of the horrible intolerance is a part of our community, unfortunately. And I don't believe that it's the majority of people in our community.
She makes it sound so easy, and I guess maybe it just is easy if you don't think about it too much. Using the privilege we have to help others who don't necessarily have either the voice or the ability to be able to speak out.
I believe they're a minority, but they're a loud, angry, hateful minority, and I think we all need to stand up against that.
Wow, well said. Were you always such a strong activist, or like, did you always know you wanted to get into activism type of work?
Well, it's interesting because I'm not really a joiner. Like, weirdly enough, like I wasn't really into joining clubs and stuff. I'm kind of like, whatever. So I've always been very outspoken, and like when I was a teenager, like I would stand up to teachers who were unfair, or like I absolutely would do that.
What was that like? What? Tell me. Give me an example.
I am just picturing teenage Willow giving shit to all her teachers who weren't being fair. I don't think that I would have wanted to be one of those teachers. Like, yeah, it's a fun thought.
Oh, I don't think I want to do that.
Because teachers might be watching this.
But no, there was an incident I had with a friend of mine who was. He didn't come out till after high school, but he is gay, and he was bullied, and we had an administrator who basically told him it was his fault for acting too feminine. And I was very angry about that.
Wow, yeah,
about that.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
And you were what? Sorry, which grade?
Grade 9, I think.
Yeah. And you were like.
So I was just like, I didn't hesitate to talk to teachers about things I thought were unfair.
I love that.
Which was not always well received,
right.
but.
But they were probably like, oh, she's gonna make changes in this world.
Yeah.
It reminds me of my youngest daughter because she is quite outspoken as well, and it's true because to a younger child, or especially a younger child that knows what they should be seeing and that's experiencing something totally different, it's like, hold on, wait, what? Yeah. That's not the way it should have gone.
Yeah, but I didn't know I was going to get into actual politics.
You didn't?
Yeah,
okay.
No, I mean, I've written letters to the editor before, back at, 10 years before I got into politics. Like, I do sometimes speak out and, with my friends, and obviously I always vote because voting's important,
hugely
but I
important.
didn't do what I'm doing now.
So it was more in the context of being a responsible and capable member of society.
Yeah, and I have believed it, it was a really big thing. People talk about it a little less now, but when I was in university, there was the phrase that was the personal is political. So the choices that you make in your life are political choices. So when you purchase things, that actually is a choice. Like, are you shopping local? Or are you shopping at big box stores and stuff like that? And by the way, I do shop at big box stores as well, like, because it's just the reality of life. But I do try to shop. I try to make decisions, for the way I want the world to be.
Such an important point, and I really love that you brought that up. And even when I'm teaching environmental science, I always feel like such a hypocrite because, oh wait, but did I drive my car to get to campus today? And I do think that those that are in circles of activism or whatever specific causes may be, we have to also be okay with forgiving ourselves that we're existing in a framework still.
Exactly.
and we can't live in a perfect world because we don't live in a perfect world.
Well, there's another phrase that I do like, which is don't let perfection be the enemy of the good.
Nice.
So,
that's brilliant.
So, yes, none of us are perfect, but we should still try. Right?
Absolutely.
So, I drive a gas-burning car, but we also chose to just have one. And
exactly.
We...
Don't let perfection be the enemy of good.
Organize our life around having one vehicle. So there's, I've made a little choice there. Could I be better? Could I have an electric vehicle? Of course, I can. Didn't have the money for that when I bought my last vehicle, but, we try to do, we live in an apartment. We don't live in a giant house. Like, we try to live a little bit more simply. We do what we can.
It's living the solution, basically.
Yeah.
You want to live as an example, and I love that because in a way that is sort of the epitome of what community leaders are. Okay, so speaking of, your leadership in the community, will you be running for school board again in the fall?
Yes, I am planning to run again. Yeah. It was actually a very, very difficult decision for me.
Tell me about it.
Spoiler alert, it is the campaign right now. So, oh my goodness. Cool timing.
So I'm so passionate about education. Like, even though we've talked about how I didn't really like the actual teaching, I just believe public education is fundamental to a democratic society. Allowing all kids, regardless of economic background, to get a full education for free is just like a cornerstone of democracy. And so I'm so passionate about it. And I really think my experience is valuable to the board.
Oh, so valuable.
But the bullying and harassment that I have received from fellow trustees has been unbelievable. Like, to the point where before, around Christmas in 2021, like, I almost quit. I almost couldn't take it anymore. Well, you've seen some of the emails, and you've seen the way I'm treated in the meetings, especially the ones that are outside of the public eye. It's just atrocious. And I recognize that that's been a tactic and that they're trying to do it so that I won't run. So on the one hand, obviously I wanted to run automatically because of that, but it's also taken a really big personal toll on me. But I have decided I am running again. And so we'll see how it goes. I really hope that Chilliwack comes out in droves to the polls and makes a big statement on what kind of a society we want to have, because this has been ridiculous.
It's been something else.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Voting Day is October the 15th of this year. And I sure hope that this interview motivates you to get out to the polls.
I've only been on the school board for just over a year and a bit. Yeah. I came in on a by-election about 2/3 of the way through your first term. And, it's funny, as being someone, I like to think I was kind of appraised of what goes on in our school district, but honestly, I had no idea what I was in for with that. Yeah. And when I first started attending these meetings and seeing some of these tactics you describe, it's shocking. It's like, what? Yeah. You could, what? It's like that. And so I've learned from you, because I've learned and I've seen the way you obviously it's hurtful. Yeah. And it's hard when someone's literally attacking your character and your person. Yeah. It's hard to continue, and yet you do.
I try, yeah. But I mean, you've also seen me in tears multiple times. So we try. One tries one's best to stay strong, but it's not been easy.
Well, and so, coming back to that, that's a really important point. Yeah. It's not like it's easy. And I hope that folks in our community know how much it means to them when they do speak out and say thank you and say, hey, I see that you're out there doing stuff on the school board. Not quite sure what that might look like behind closed doors, but I'm thanking you for that. And oh my goodness, it makes a huge difference to me. Does it make a difference to you?
It really does. And I think that's what was so hard. During the pandemic, I was not getting any of that because we were just in our own houses on Zoom. I was having these horrible board interactions. And as you know, it is literally everyone.
It's not great.
It's really bad.
Not good.
And then I wasn't getting the feedback from the public.
You weren't getting any happiness.
Yeah, whereas before, the first year and a half or so that I was on the board, I would have these horrible things happen. And then I'd go out in public and people I don't know would come up to me and say, hey, are you Willow Reichelt from the school board? And I'd say yes. And they'd say, oh, thank you so much for what you're doing. And I would be like, okay, it's been all worth it. And then during the pandemic, it was like, is it worth it? Who knows?
There was just this unknown, this question of, and also just you need to still be a functional day-to-day person, a mother, a lot of other tasks and jobs and titles that you do. So how did you, get to this place? First of all, how did you get to this place in sort of December where you were thinking this is not going to happen? And then what happened to kind of change that for you?
I think the point in December was, I think I had one meeting where I had a panic attack and had to leave. Yeah, and then there were several emails that were just pretty atrocious. So I was just I was getting to the point where I would go and see one of the trustees particular on the Zoom. And as soon as his hand went up to speak, I would start getting panicky. Yeah. So I did go to a therapist a couple times, although it was not very useful therapy. It did actually just help to talk to somebody. So it was actually pretty funny. I only did 2 sessions, and my sessions were me telling her things that had happened and her saying, oh my God. So it really wasn't very useful therapy, but it did help to talk to a person who was not involved and have it reiterated for me that what I was experiencing was not normal was not okay. And so once I really got that sorted, what I'm experiencing is not normal and it's not okay the way I'm being treated. Somehow that made
we're almost making light of it a little bit to just bring some lightness to our conversation. I do want to pause briefly to say I've read those emails. I've read these messages. This is no joke. This is serious stuff. And because of the unique position that elected officials find themselves in, there's very, very little recourse. In fact, there's no recourse for these emails to be sent. So just wanted to put that in there. She's gone through it, guys.
Me feel better even though none of the behavior is really stopped.
This is the interesting thing. And, because as a trustee, being in an elected position, there's really no one that you answer to necessarily. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of this sort of unchecked, bullying without question, really inappropriate emails and stuff. I mean, that's what happens. And, even legally, there is no recourse or,
basically we're not employees.
Right.
So we're not subject to any workplace protections.
None
so if I was an employee at the district receiving any of the emails I've received, the person who's sending those emails would get reprimanded. If they continued, they'd be fired.
Oh, they would be fired.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like they're that bad,
they
right?
Are that bad.
But I'm not an employee.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
So I don't have those protections. There is no sort of harassment policy for municipal officials. And then some of the things that have been said about me in public meetings that are defamatory, they're actually protected by parliamentary privilege. So it's the same as in the House of Commons. You can call someone a crook in the House, but if you say it in the hallway, you could be sued.
It's defamation.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So basically, there's not much you can do other than censuring, which is an option to censure people, where the board says, we don't approve of you. But normally, on most boards, being censured, people have enough integrity that if their board tells them that they're doing something wrong, they're like, oh my goodness, I'll stop that.
Yeah.
But that hasn't had any effect on our board.
No.
So going through that process hasn't been very useful, unfortunately.
Right. And also, with respect to the defamation, I mean, even in our local newspaper lately has actually been your name.
Yeah.
Utilized by another in reference to a particular learning resource.
Yeah.
It definitely must. Does it make you grow a big thick skin? What happens?
Well, I mean, in the book banning thing is so ridiculous because, I mean, people who are intelligent and care about education don't try to ban books.
Yeah.
So, I mean, on the one hand, it's...
Oh, that was a good statement. Let's go ahead and say that one again.
In the book banning thing is so ridiculous because, I mean, people who are intelligent and care about education don't try to ban books.
Yeah.
So, I mean, on the one hand, it's... it is what it is.
It is, yeah.
But I was very, very upset about that trustee's implication that our staff are grooming children. It's disgusting to say that.
Okay.
It's not right. It's homophobic, and it's just gross. And to imply that our wonderful, caring, lovely staff who work every day and are trying to make an inclusive, caring,
incredible district
community, that they're like somehow sexual predators for having a book about LGBTQ issues is just absolutely disgusting. And honestly, if that trustee had any shame, she would resign for making those comments. It's disgusting. Yeah. So, but she hasn't. And then I actually read the book that she was talking about. I read it, which she hasn't done. So I read it all the way through and I did a review of it. And then, she doesn't like that. So she
like your review much.
Yeah.
But I love how you react with action. React with positive affirmative action, and that's another lesson that I absolutely take from you in this way. I want to know a little bit more about what plans you have for the future, including your run. We're just going to take another quick break, and we'll be back to talk about that as we wrap up with Willow Reichelt.
Excellent, thank you.
And we are back with Willow Reichelt. Now, I know you are going to be running or are running this fall, but that's one of the things you do. What does the rest of, the next few years look like for you? What are some...
Yeah, I don't really know other than that. We've recently moved. Yes. We're living downtown, which I'm very excited about because I really believe in walkability, and so I can walk everywhere now, which I'm loving. And so my personal life is going well. I'm really enjoying that. My other job, I do work as a constituency assistant as well. Yes. And so that's a really interesting job because you're basically just helping constituents access government services. If they don't know where to go, you just redirect them. And so that's a really cool job.
Basically troubleshooting for the general public in terms of what kind of questions, like where they access this type of
like people will have phone, they'll call in or write about having trouble accessing housing or having, when we had the floods, like people have asking questions about that, like just all of that kind of stuff. And then people writing to the MLA, obviously, with other concerns as well. Yeah. But the work in the constituency office is nonpartisan. We're not allowed to actually talk about what party our MLA is from.
Fair enough.
It's completely, we give services to everyone in the community. They don't have to be a supporter of the party that's in office. So nice. It's really cool.
Another key feature, I guess, of the Democratic Society.
It's the constituency work is nonpartisan. So it's just really helping people.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. And you also, your young baby has just graduated.
Yes.
So I guess he'll be maybe a bigger part of your life.
Yeah. He's going to be probably getting a job, and so that's really cool. And I'm really looking forward to continuing the hard work that we've been doing on the school board. I mean, the strategic plan that we just developed recently is so amazing. It's just really, really good. I love the way it focuses, obviously, on reading and math, which is literacy and math are fundamental, obviously. Yeah. But then the social emotional awareness, I think you and I are very aware that if a kid comes to school in trauma, they're not going to be able to learn to read.
Yes.
Like, you have to address those basic things first, right?
Absolutely. And we have to move away from a system that doesn't understand that.
Yeah.
How can we learn anything if we haven't eaten, if we don't feel safe, if we don't feel comfortable?
Exactly. And then, the way we have really wrapped Indigenous principles around the strategic plan, which is great. And I really believe that reconciliation is a duty that we need to be involved in. It's not just like, we're doing reconciliation. Like, there have been real distinct harms done to Indigenous people throughout history, and we need to fix it. Yeah. And we need to just acknowledge it's happened and move forward. And, I don't feel like our work will be done until the grad rates for Indigenous and non-Indigenous students are the same. Yes. Like, we shouldn't be able to look and go, well, these are lower than those. It should be the same. So we're going to really work on that. Yeah.
And I love that our district is quite focused on that. Yeah. We have a lot of excellent teachers and support workers, and our district principal, Brenda Point, who is amazing to, basically empower our Indigenous students. Probably one of my favorite grads was the Queequeg grad, where we have a significant Indigenous population there, and what a wonderful and beautiful celebration that was.
Yeah, and I loved that one too, and everyone was just so proud of their kids. And, it was lovely.
It was brilliant. And the other aspect of the strat plan that I find really exciting is the details or the attention we're giving to those transition periods.
Yes. Well, that's always been a real problem. We know from data that where kids tend to fall off and sort of get lost in the system and maybe not be successful is when they transition from one school to another or one grade to another, because the people who know them are no longer there. The supports that they've developed over a number of years are, gone, and then they move to another school. And if we don't focus on making sure the receiving school or the receiving teacher knows the kid and knows about the issues, knows what worked and what didn't work, they're not necessarily going to be successful. So I think it was really brilliant that, our district staff, as they're writing the strat plan, that they really realized that and focused on that.
I really love that because, as a biologist, and we consider transitional zones between ecosystems as incredibly important, biodiverse, unique places. And for me, those parallels are really there. Like transitions between grades are an opportunity to really focus on what you've learned, reiterate what you've learned, and then move to the next level. But right at that position too, you could drop it if it's not handled correctly.
Totally, yeah. So. And then we were doing things like continuing testing kids' reading level all the way through middle school now. Because it used to be just till grade 6, and then if they didn't reach, well, we call it PM benchmark 30, but that's about a grade 4 or 5 reading level, I think is 30. If they didn't reach that by the time they went to middle school, it's like, oh, you know, no one was following up on that. And now we're really trying to make sure that by the end of middle school, every single kid is literate, right?
Yes.
And it's hard to track if you aren't testing it.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's all these sort of nuances about testing and whether sort of blanket testing is a good thing, and in some ways it is, and in some ways it's not.
Yeah.
But there's so many nuances in it, and I think that's what makes you such an amazing part of our school board, is that you understand so many of these systems.
Yes, I mean I don't really like standardized testing all that much, just in that, like, especially the FSAs, the way they're currently structured, because they take a lot of time, and I think you have to teach to the test,
which I
don't like. But I think that I would like them if they took less time. If we could get down to like where it's like 2 hours of class time, that's it. I do think some data is really important, because if you don't know what you're testing, if you don't know what your goal is, how do you get better at it?
Exactly.
Like,
how do we move?
If you want kids to read better and you have no way of measuring how well they can read now, how do you know if they got better at it? So I do think we do need some testing. I think PM benchmarks are a fairly good test. They're quite time consuming for the teachers to do, but they do show you how well kids can read. So.
Yes, you know, exactly. There's merit in them. So what would you say, as we sort of wrap up here, what would be, you know, your biggest, proudest moment as a trustee thus far?
My proudest moment was definitely the dress code.
Yeah.
I think that I've always just really had a problem with the way teen girls were monitored and just really shamed for having bodies, basically. And I heard from so many people how awful that experience was, especially for girls who are a little bit chubby, say, where they just have bigger breasts. And suddenly they're getting they're already self-conscious about their bodies, and then they're getting told, you know, getting kicked out of class because some cleavage is showing or whatever. The fact that we were able to make a dress code that focuses on safety, and so you have to come, if you're in the science lab and you're not dressed appropriately because you're going to get burnt with chemicals, you can't wear that. But other than that, you can wear what you want, and you know, it's up to each family to decide.
Female empowerment is what she is promoting with this dress code. I completely agree. Why has it always been the responsibility of young women to take care of the irresponsible actions of young men? So I love that this dress code is all about safety, pragmatism, and common sense. Yes.
What their modesty level is, and it's up to all the rest of us to treat people with respect regardless of what they're wearing.
There it is, right there. And it's not a girl's responsibility for a boy's poor behaviors or decision making. I love that.
And it's not just girls, but it just was mostly girls that were targeted, right? It obviously was other students as well, but it's hard to talk about dress code without talking about gender, because it was mostly girls getting monitored. Yes.
Yeah. So I would imagine that was so tell me about that process. You come up with, you know, the framework for how the change is going to go.
Yeah, well, it was actually kind of funny because I didn't know what I was doing because I was a new trustee, and basically I had talked to someone about how awful the school board was and how stressed out I was by some of the behaviors of some of my trustees. And they basically told me, you need to stop worrying about that and just do something you care about.
Yes.
And so I was like, great, this is a thing I want to tackle. And so I brought forward like a draft of a policy based on the Victoria School District's one.
Okay.
And then we sent it to EPAC, which is our Education Policy Advisory Committee, and then they sent it back in a form that was the opposite of my intention. And then I did an amendment, and then I proposed an amendment, and then that passed, and then we have the current dress code. Had I known more about being a school trustee, what I would have done is I would have brought forward a motion saying that EPAC should draft a policy with these tenets in mind, like gender neutrality. I would have done that instead of coming with a pre-written policy, but I didn't know what I was doing.
Exactly.
And now we did do the review with EPAC this year of that policy, and everyone's happy with it. Like, it got no feedback. It's just the same form it was in before. So I feel better at that, because I kind of did it in a weird way, but
you only do things that way until you figure out your process.
But then, of course, it wasn't just me. Like, the board passed that, but that was like an initiative that I was
you.
really passionate about.
Oh,
so,
that's so cool. And I'm just so pleased to get this opportunity to hear about your work. I mean, we hear so much drama, we hear so much of this, and that but I know the amazing work that you do outside of those crazy headlines. So,
and I do just want to say one last thing. I really want Chilliwack to just think about what kind of a city they want to live in. Do you want to live in a modern, thriving, diverse, the city we do live in, the city we live in, do you want that to be our reputation in the province and in the country, or do you want to live in a backward, regressive, hateful city? Yeah. And if you want to live in the city I want to live in, then really think about that when you come to the ballot box in the municipal elections. It's really important we have a chance to change our city's reputation, because it's been tarnished by some of the antics on the school board.
I agree that it has. Thank you. Thank you for those beautiful words, those telling words, and thank you for being so brave, and thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.